Everyone, we are today here for Steve. He's gonna show us some new skills. He will talk about how to take your steps on how to follow up to your dream and eventually get to your dream. It will be kind of a workshop session today. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. At Too Good we don't only have our co-working space, but we also have events. Tonight we have the Pecha Kucha night, and you can still buy tickets here for 75k and the early bird tickets, and at the door if you just want to join for 100. And later today, if you're interested in bitcoins, we also have a session for that. So yeah, if you want to learn about it, join. And now I leave it to Steve.
Thank you guys for coming, and like she said, my name's Steve, and I help people expand their purpose in life and business. And I will get a little bit more into that and tell you about my story. But I just want to go around the room, and if you could just say your name and what brought you here, what kind of work you do, whatever you feel like sharing.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I've just graduated from uni studying Chinese, and I'm currently applying and researching options for going back to China.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, my name is Maria. I'm from Denmark, and I'm an entrepreneur. And I also do my master thesis in entrepreneurship.
My name is Niklas. I'm from Liechtenstein, and I'm currently studying and working for a bank, doing digital transformation. And yes, definitely holiday and work combined here.
Thanks.
I'm Chris. I'm the director here from California. I do a whole variety of different things. So,
Thanks, Chris.
I'm Hannah. I'm a digital marketing intern here at Too Good, and I'm from Germany.
My name is Maia. I'm from Holland. I'm the communication intern here at Too Good, and I study international studies in Holland.
I'm Drew. I came here because I left my career in education management, and I'm working on a few different projects to see what works.
Nice.
If you said you're interested in China, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there 10 years.
Yeah, and I'm Johannes, and I'm also from Denmark. And figuring out how the digital nomad life is possible, it can be possible. Yeah. I'll teach you that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Peter from Germany, and doing a few different things. Yeah.
Nice. Well, thanks for everyone for coming. So I think what I'm going to do is first just kind of tell you a little bit about my story that's going to give you an idea of actually how powerful some of this work is that we do. And does anyone here know what it's like to live their truth or to find their truth in life or their purpose, or is looking to find their truth? Yeah, it's one of those things that you find it, but then there's always that next level, and it's a thing that it never ends, and so it's a continuous journey of really just finding yourself. And so I wanted to take this opportunity and kind of share what it's like in the process and some of the tools you can actually use to find this truth, and so you can really live the dreams of your life. And so how many of you have an unmet dream or desire? Okay, not everyone.
come on.
I need to push you. These are the ones you guys are gonna get picked on. Like those are we all. It's normal for us as human beings to want more, to continuously evolve. If we're not evolving, we're dying. Really, it's our human nature to want to be more, to be better, to love more, to love deeper. Has anyone here ever felt like they reached a goal in one area while they struggled in another area? Like you can go make a bunch of money, but then you don't have the relationship, or you have the relationship and your job sucks. And so you end up having like this life that's out of balance and feeling like, it's kind of like you're like spinning, plates on a stake. You get one going, one falls, and it's like this continuous thing. Can anyone relate to kind of the energy that it gets expended when you do that kind of stuff? I know that for me, I lived a lot of my life like that, and so I had to learn how to bring balance into my life. And so I'll kind of go into my story a little bit, but I was, I started a family very young, around 20 years old. I got I married my high school sweetheart, and I got her pregnant while she was still in high school, and I thought I could go do the right thing and marry her and start a family. And that's exactly what I did. I did everything that, society wants you to do. You have for a guy, the pretty wife, the kids, the house, the six-figure career, and I had all those things. Problem is that a lot of me was out of balance, and I was kind of this weekend warrior. I was, addictions, drinking, and just my life. Like I could go make money and have this family, but like I just was, I really wasn't happy on the inside because I was kind of, spinning all the plates that weren't really making me happy. It was all the things that were taught in society that we're supposed to do. And I was also a corporate consultant and technology consultant during that time. And so I was in a career that really, really drained me. And then I experienced, well, depending on how you look at it, it was really the best day of my life, but it was the worst day of my life. I had a gun to my head. I'd been getting high for 3 days in a row. And while I was coming down, I found out my wife of 20 years had an affair. And it was the worst pain I have ever experienced in my entire life. And so I was at a point where, like, I'm fucking done living like this. I can't do this anymore. And so I am willing to either blow my brains out, or that old life has got to be dead to me and I have to change right now. And that's when I started listening to my heart, my spirit, my inner calling, my inner truth, my inner flame, whatever you want to call it. And I asked it, yes or no? And the answer was no. I was called to do other things. I was called to be of service to people. And so I went on this, personal development journey, and it kind of started with the basics, mindfulness and, relationships, and I tried to fix my marriage. And after about 6 months, I realized that I had to file for divorce. And so my life really, talk about the death of the ego and the things you're identified with, the career, the family, your kids, being a husband, and all these things. I had no more of these identities. And so it was literally like a physical death of my body. And actually, as I started to change, I actually started noticing my body change. My cellular expression began to change as I released that old self, the addictions and all the old identities and masks that I used to wear. And as I went down this journey, I'm basically all alone. My kids aren't with me all the time like they were before. And I had to ask myself, what do I want? I'm going to go through this legal process. I don't really like my job. I don't really like the divorce or the relationship that I was in. And so I had to ask myself, what do I want? Because all this other shit that everyone else wants me to do, and how the courts want me to be, how the ex wants me to be, how the job wants me to be, like, it doesn't work for anymore. It doesn't work. And so I have to change. And so what I had to do is I had to get really clear on what I wanted. And so, like, this exercise, we're going to get into the specifics of it in a little bit, but like, this is the same exercise that I continue to use with my coaching clients in finding out what your heart desires. Now, the one thing about what your heart desires is sometimes I wonder if God like programmed it into me beforehand, and it's just a journey to find out what it is, or if it's actually something I get to invent. I'm not sure yet. If you know, let me know. But it is something that is like hard-coded in you, and it is a truth that you cannot deny, and if you deny it, you will struggle. And like, that is a fact that I've had to experience and learn from. The interesting thing is, it's also like a North Star. You always know where you're going when the shit hits the fan. It doesn't matter what shows up, you always maintain the higher perspective of your heart's calling. And so I can share with you a little bit some of the more critical times when I really had to use this tool. The first one was, leaving the marriage. That was really scary, but I had to look at all the things what I wanted in a relationship, and that wasn't it. The drinking, the affairs, she didn't want to change, and we kind of grew apart, and so I don't want that anymore. And that was a terrifying thing to leave, a family that I had known half my life, and it's a very painful thing. And then as I went through the divorce process, there was a point where a year into the process, I was paying all the child support. The court tacked me with the bills because I'm a six-figure dad, and it got to a point where I couldn't really afford it, and I'm like really just drowning out in my career. I had a successful career, but I was working, federal government projects and really big, like high pressure types of projects where I was expected to perform, and I was at a point where I just wasn't called into that kind of work anymore, and so it became really hard. And I was at a point where I'm like, I can't afford all these bills, I can't afford to take off work to go to the courts, and I don't know how to do it all. Like, I can't anymore. And so basically I said, fuck it. Like, I guess I'm not going to do it. It does not align with what I want to do and what I feel like I'm called to do in this world. Now, the problem is, you don't go to the courts and go, hey, you know what? I found my calling in life. I'm going to serve people so that we don't have all this bullshit that I'm going through right now. And they don't go, you know what? We need more of you. Let's come up with something reasonable that you can afford, and so you can get on with your life. It doesn't work like that. They'll throw your ass in jail. And that's almost what happened. I said, I don't know what to tell you guys anymore. I tried to work it out with the spouse, and I'm like, I can't, my heart can no longer do this. This is where I'm at. And so there was we couldn't come up with a solution, so I had to go, you know what, I guess then I go to jail then, if that's what needs to happen. I can't do this anymore. And so I started my business, a location independent business. I now live in Bali. And but it was a very scary time, because if I hadn't known what I really wanted, if I hadn't known what my heart really wanted, I would have listened to everyone else and what they wanted me to do, and what, quite frankly, wasn't good for me anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. And so as I went through that, I basically I stuck to that desire. And the interesting thing happened is nothing ended up happening. They actually were kind of like, okay, I guess this guy knows what he's going to do. And it just kind of evaporated. Everything just fell away. And it was interesting. I learned a valuable lesson. When we stop listening to everyone else, when we listen to our heart, it's like the universe, conspires to support what you're doing, or God supports you, whatever you want to call it. And it's just, it's actually like magic. And so one of these things, when we go in and get tuned into these things and really dig deep in these things, they have a magical way of working out. Not only getting through the tough things when shit gets thrown in your life, but also just, there's a compounding effect of just creating in your life. And so one of the other things I wrote about was, I wanted to take my boys around the world. I wanted to have, a location independent business where I could work around the world. And then one of the other, and the money and the wealth that I wanted to create. And the other thing was the relationship. I wanted to call in a relationship. I wanted to get married again. I had done a lot of work on myself. And so about 3 months, when I got here, I ended up meeting my fiance. And so it's crazy, the details, when I go back through that old exercise that I did. It's like boom, 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 boom. Now, one of the interesting things, though, is that we can oftentimes deny our desires, or we change the priorities of them, and somehow they don't end up kind of working out the way that we want them to. I can share an example with you. So when I came here, I was like, okay, and I had done all this work, and I thought I was really clear on it. I'm like, hey, I'm going to come to Bali, and I'm going to start my business, and then I'm going to take my boys around the world, and then maybe I'll find that relationship that I really desire. Guess what I desired the most? Any guesses? Yeah, the relationship. And so guess what? I didn't get anything. But I was at, I don't know, it's some intention circle or something like that. And I was like, what am I, they asked a question, what are you afraid of? And I was like, I'm really clear on what I want, but I was afraid to call in a relationship for some reason. And as soon as I realized that, I ended up meeting her, I think it's 2 or 3 weeks later, with a countdown to New Year's. And so it was this very magical experience. And so it's interesting how our mind can limit us or deny things that we want. And so when we do exercises like this, we have to be mindful of like what we really desire, and then also just keeping it. Some people read them every day, or some people update them every month, but just it becomes somewhat of a practice. And so how I like to break this up is we can go ahead and just kind of get into the exercise now. And does everyone have pen and paper? Okay. Yeah, I don't think I need a pen. Does anyone have any questions about what your desires are? Like, what does that mean to have your heart's desires? Does anyone have any confusion about that?
What does it feel?
Great question. It's actually a felt sense. Because like we don't want things, like you don't want money, you want how money makes you feel. Because money can make you feel safe, it can make you feel like you have an abundant life, it can be comfortable, right? And so really our desires are how we actually want to feel. We all, at our very core, we want to feel loved, right? We want to feel loved by receiving money, affection, time from other people, gifts. And so those are what our desires actually are. They're not the things that we really like identify with that somehow feel a void. It's something much deeper that we actually feel. Not because necessarily we need it to feel normal, but it's just something that we desire. Does anyone have any other questions about that?
So you're saying the inner desire should be a feeling more than
Yeah.
something specific?
Yeah,
Tangible.
exactly.
Okay.
So it's going like, hey, I want money because I want to feel a certain way, or I want a relationship because I want to feel a certain way. And now you could also, sometimes those feelings, we're using those feelings to cover something up. And so you could also be mindful of that. Like, I want a relationship because I feel lonely. That's not really a good reason to want a relationship, but if you're honest with it and bring awareness to it, okay, then why are you lonely? And then heal that, and then you can just have a relationship just because you want to have more in your life, someone to share it with. Does that answer your question? Any other? Okay. So, high level, I'm going to break these things down into the primary categories that desires generally fall into. You can have your own categories. You get to make it up. They're your desires, and it's your life, and you can really create anything that you want to. And then what we're going to do is after you break the different desires that you have in your life, then we kind of combine it into like a story form. Because it's kind of like we're telling our own story of our own heart to ourselves, to our conscious mind. Because a lot of these desires are actually in our subconscious that we don't actually know. We're not conscious of a lot of what our subconscious does, and our subconscious it drives like, I don't know, it processes billions and billions of bits of information, whereas our conscious mind only processes like a few million. I don't remember the numbers, but it's like a drop in the bucket. And so this is kind of somewhat of a subconscious exercise in how you feel, and that's where our decisions come from in life. And so when we tap into that, we have a better idea about where we're going. When stuff comes into your life, when you have questions come into your life, when you're tuned into this stuff, you automatically respond differently without even thinking about it. And so that's how it ends up manifesting, because we're just subconsciously we don't have to think, we don't have to use our mind as much anymore, and it just unfolds. So, the first one I listed is health. So I want you to go through and just on the back of the paper, or they printed on double side, or maybe on the back sheet it looks like there's a blank page on the back. But list any health goals that you might have. If you want to lose 5 pounds, if you want to, go get your blood work done, you want to wear a bikini, you want to have a 6-pack, go ahead and write down, take a couple minutes, like 2 minutes, and write down if you have any health, fitness goals. If you have anything that you want to heal, go ahead and write that down. And there's some questions there to help you kind of go through that. It'll help get your mind to start thinking about some of the goals that you might want to attain.
Sorry, what do we have to write down?
Any health-related goals that you might have. And it could also be you want to do yoga every day, or do yoga once a week.
Okay.
Or it could be you just want to look better, or you want to feel better, or have more energy, just something that has to do with your health. That was actually one of my first parts of my transformations when I cleaned up. I had to heal my liver disease. I lost 50 pounds of fat, and I went from, literally having my gallbladder taken out to my doctor telling me I had the best blood work she's ever seen. Yeah, and so this was one of my areas of transformation that I had to knock out first, because my body was in bad shape. All right, next, I want you to write what it feels like when you achieve that, or yeah, exactly. What does it feel like when you're either like working towards it, or when you actually achieve it? Like, hey, I feel great when I go to yoga every day, or I go and work out, or I feel amazing that I'm 5 pounds lighter. Or I love how the women are going to look at me when I have my new 6-pack. Whatever floats your boat. Okay. You guys ready to move on to the next one? All right, now we're going to do something similar for your wealth. Money. You know, do you have any money goals? You know, they could be next week, they could be next year. But what do you want? Do you want $1 million? Do you want 20 extra $1,000? US dollars, not rupiah. Do you want a certain amount of money in savings? Stock assets, real estate. You want your bills paid for a year. Or a lifetime, actually. Oh, one other thing I also want to mention, I want there to be a bit of, might feel like you're exaggerating. But the interesting thing happens when you exaggerate some things, it actually creates new neural pathways in the mind. When you start thinking about those, you start thinking about new potentials in your life. And even though they might sound ridiculous right now, you're actually evolving your brain when you start thinking like that. And it actually changes your thought patterns going on because you start going, oh, maybe that is possible. Especially when you commit it to paper. And so that could be a very powerful way to literally evolve into your next level. So don't be afraid to exaggerate. And now write what that feels like. Like, it's great if you have $1 billion, but what does that actually feel like? You know, what does it feel like not to ever have to worry about money again? What does it feel like to be able to support people that you love? What does it feel like to support causes that you want to support? I think with wealth, one of the big ones is you feel supported and you feel freedom. You feel free. Is this flowing out for everyone? Is anyone getting stuck on any of these where it's not coming out? Let me know if it does. Sometimes in certain areas it can be actually hard to know what we want. Maybe not in all areas, but there might be those areas where we're like, I don't know. Never thought about it. Didn't think it was possible. All right, here's an interesting one, your lifestyle. This is when it gets real creative.
What do you mean about that lifestyle? Give examples.
Like, we all came to Bali, right? But maybe it could be another part of the world. Maybe you want to live on Mars.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to have a different kind of life where you want to be a president, live in the White House in America. Like, yeah, it's what kind of lifestyle do you want?
So also job related.
Yeah, this is where we can kind of get into the job. You can get into activities, sports, business. It's the part that Like, what kind of lifestyle is it? Like, when you wake up, what do you go do? Where do you go to work out? Where out in the world are you? What sort of people are around you? But there is this section on relationships and work. So they'll kind of intertwine somewhat. This is where there's no right or wrong. It's just we're just kind of brainstorming at this point. We're kind of doing a mind map, if you would, to get those creative juices flowing. Oh, I actually put, you want to be a digital nomad in here. Nice. Yeah, like mine, like I can imagine waking up where I'm like, I have a team of people like managing my property and all the farm animals and everything's like I'm living off the land, like off the grid. Like that's how I want, out in nature, and have those all over the world. That's kind of my lifestyle, where some people might want to live in the city or live in Ubud. Travel the world working, or travel the world surfing, or taking photographs, or working. And another thing, when I think of lifestyle, I put in here for fun and laughing. Like it's one of those things, like, what are you gonna, it's the part of life where you really enjoy. How do you live life? How do you express life from your heart? If you could have any kind of life that you ever wanted. All right, let's tackle relationships next. These don't necessarily have to be romantic. They could be, do you want to start a family? Do you want 3 kids? But I generally think of this as like your intimate relationships. They could be romantic or family-based relationships. And they could also be existing ones, like, I don't really get along with my brothers and sisters, and I want to have a loving relationship with them. Like if there's something that really means something to you in your heart, something that you really desire, that may not be reality today, but you want to change it in the future, this would be a good place to list that. It could be finding a parent, it could be anything. And then listing, like, how does it feel when you have that relationship? Like, how does it feel to repair that relationship that you lost or isn't real strong right now? How does it feel when you find the love of your life? How does it feel when you have that child that you want to have in the future? Really tapping into the feelings on this. And what does that feel like when you have those things? All right, so the last category I listed was work. This is something, if you could wake up tomorrow and do anything that you wanted to do every day for the rest of your life that you would absolutely love, what would that be? That you're not doing today. Like if you're already kind of doing that, what's your next level? Like this is the part that I do most of my work, especially when I'm working with clients. Because to me, living life is about living your purpose. Living your purpose is about fulfilling these desires. And so when we can do the work that we're called to do and serve the people we're supposed to support, it'll automatically create all these other desires or fulfill them. So like, are you speaking on stage? Are you in space? Are you dealing in investments, stocks, financial stuff? Are you a digital nomad? Who are your clients? Do you have a job or do you have a business? Does that business work for you or do you work for it? How does your business contribute to the world? What sort of problems do you solve? Are you a nonprofit? Are you for profit? Or do you have a business, a traditional business that just makes you a bunch of money, but you just get to volunteer all your time? Do you want to build an empire? Is it online? Is it offline? If you're working with people, who are those people? Are they annoying clients? Or are they your friends that you kind of want to hang out with? Are they people in need that you can serve in some way? And most importantly, when you go to work every day, what do you feel like at the end of the day when you did what you want to do? What does that feel like? You feel tired, or you energized, like you contributed to making someone's life better, making your life better, supporting your family? What does that feel like? Okay. Did I miss any core desires that you're feeling like, hey, I want this in my life, but I wasn't able to write about it? Is there anything out there that, hey, I always wanted this, but I didn't talk about that? There's got to be one thing someone missed.
Well, I've been wanting to get a cat, but I'm getting that tomorrow. So it's
A cat?
Yeah.
Okay. That could be maybe like a lifestyle thing or a relationship thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I think we missed kind of like hobbies or something, so I wrote down, I want a piano in my house.
Yeah. Now, I maybe lifestyle thing.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. Anything else? That's what the lifestyle one's for. It's kind of everything else goes in lifestyle. Yeah. Because there's just so many variations on kind of what we can create. Does anyone have any questions at this point?
Well, one of the differentiators is kind of the needs versus wants, and you're sort of defining it as desires, which I think you're saying that those are both implying needs and wants and stuff like that. But I think this is a constant struggle where people can't differentiate between needs and wants, and that creates a lot of cloudy belief systems, right? Moving beyond what we actually need and things that we want, but aren't necessarily necessary. So.
In the present moment, right, yeah, there's a needs and a wants. This exercise is designed, our needs and wants are both the same thing. Our desires are actually a need, a spiritual need, to propel us and to further evolve us. And so the way I see this is in our continuous expansion of ourselves as creators, that when we live in that space, not judging it as a need or want, but just, hey, that's a desire, right? And since it's kind of somewhat, we're on a journey to it, I don't want to say it's in the future because I don't want to limit how soon it can come, but I tend to just call it a desire. So that way it's our pathway towards something. It's like the North Star. It's the direction that we travel. But you could break it down into a need or a want. But I feel like me living my desires is actually more of a need now. And the more I live like that, the more it just kind of unfolds.
But I think you have to be highly grounded to be able to differentiate between needs, desires, and wants. So there's a platform that this rests on for everybody, right? Which I'm sure you explore and talk about, because I think sometimes people think that, oh, I need that or I desire that, but it is, it's something that you could an addiction, you can
Right.
believe is a need or a desire.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
so you have to have the grounding to be able to differentiate. And you were talking about this earlier. My question's a touch rhetorical, I guess.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm going to get a little bit into navigating this, because we can have denied desires, and we can mix things up, and we can get confused, and we have a lot of limiting beliefs and beliefs that we think that we need things that we really don't. And that's also why I'm trying to tap into the feeling of it, because when we tap into the feeling, that's an inspirational feeling. And so when we feel something that feels true, we all know what it feels like for things that aren't good for us, and we all know what it feels like things that aren't good for us. And so when we get in tune to those things, the more we get in tune by doing exercises like this, the more awareness we have to where we're going in direction in our life. And so like when I first did this stuff, like I was like going like this in and out of it. But as you practice it, it's like you can fine tune things. And so it's more of a practice of doing this regularly. And there's also different ways to do it with, a vision board or mood board, writing, painting, things of that nature. Okay, so next is, yes.
Yeah, it's just in regards to the wealth,
Mhm.
because I know what the feelings I want to feel, and I also know what I want. But at the same time, I'm starting a new business, and it's a startup, so you don't really know how it's gonna go. So I have a hard time believing that I can earn those kind of money.
Yeah, why don't we go into there? Because I'll give you guys a little bit of a writing break, because what we're going to do is, I can spend 10 minutes talking about this, but we're going to go into the kind of the second half of the exercise, which is tying all these pieces together into the story that we want to create. And so you bring up a great point. So you have your desires, right? We have our desires. We are right here, and we have desires over there. Right? So you had the desire of money, right? But you believe what about money? That it's not going to happen or something like that? Or that it might not happen?
Well, I think it will happen eventually, but I just don't know when. And I don't know if it's going to be in this startup, but I have a feeling that eventually I will be financially independent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, really, the only thing that keeps, we're right here, we're trying to get there, right? Oftentimes, we have belief systems that we believe that we want this, right? But we're right here and we don't have that right now, right? In my experience and in the work I do, the only thing that's going to keep us back is really just the beliefs that were created mostly when we were very young, and the conditioning and the programming that we've received. And so, like, if I say that I want $1 million and I'm willing to do the work to create $1 million, but I actually don't believe that I deserve it fully, those beliefs are going to have to be countered by hard work to overcome that separation we have on what we believe that we want. And so I don't know how many people can relate to like working really hard to get what you want. Feel like you have to work hard to get to earn something, to get the right job and get all those things. Yeah, those are actually, we're trying to overcome something. But when we have full belief in that everything's at our fingertips, it's only us that it's in the way, then we end up pulling those things down much quicker. but we have to really go back here and look at our belief systems that are creating our, think of like a computer system. Like if computer system has code that says, hey, do work to make $1 million, but then it has code running that says that you have to get lucky, that that only happens to certain people, that I don't deserve it, I'm not really lovable to get that kind of money, I'm not lucky enough, and all the other beliefs that come with it. And so you're having this code that you're having to work against while this other code's running. But we're only conscious of the work that we're doing. But our subconscious system is all created from this stuff, mostly when we were 5. Like, I've never not worked with a client that's like, hey, I want to create this, and not been gone back to when they're, very young and done belief work on them, that actually finding out why they are not getting what they want. I just put a testimonial on my website from someone in town that basically that's what happened. She pulled 10 grand down in one day because the work going back here, she didn't feel worthy of money and was working on a bunch of different projects, trying to do all this work. And I'm like, what's at your fingertips? She had all the contacts and everything there. The only thing she had was this belief that was created when she was, like 4 years old. 2 days later, she goes out and she pulls down $10,000. Like, this is a very simple way to look at it, and this gets really into like the work I do and helping people live their purpose in life. But the separation between where you're at and what you desire, this is where we're going. So anytime you're going down and you're experiencing life and you go, hey, I know what I desire, I know where I'm going, right? And you're going towards that path, and then something happens that's counter to this, right? My results do not match my desires. So whenever that happens to me, I ask myself, what prison am I living in right now that I do not know? What is it within me that's not creating that? And so every time I go in and find out where that misalignment is, because of some belief down here, some conditioning from school, my parents, or some bullshit that happened when I was younger, and I go in and I realign those things to full truth, I end up creating those things. It's like magic. It just automatically happens.
How do you work out?
Sorry?
How do you work out those things?
How do I work out those things? Mentors. Mentors is like, I don't go without a coach. And other types of people that I do the deep work with. Therapists can, but therapists generally are stuck back here healing stuff.
Yeah, but is that not, if we heal these things inside of us, is this not what in the end will get us to our inner desires, and that's what we actually want?
They can, but the thing is without the focus on where you're going, what the seven habits of highly effective people start with the end. Yeah, Steve Covey. This is basically starting with the end. So whenever you know where you're going, and you're going down that journey, and you're like, okay, I don't like what happened. Okay, instead of being the victim and going, oh, it's their fault, corporations, blaming, when we take responsibility for our desires in our lives, and we go, what is it within me that's creating this? Even if it's a relationship where you feel wronged, where you feel like you're being mistreated, what is it within me that's creating this reality? What is it within me that's creating my experience? And when you take 100% ruthless, relentless responsibility for what you're creating in life, it's like magic. And your world will start molding to your desires. And I'm not talking about desires that are rooted in a mistruth, like somehow I'm not good enough, so I need money or I need a relationship, but ones that are rooted in what you are, love, truth, those sorts of things. And when you get rooted and grounded, like Chris was saying, when you're grounded in like that self-confidence and who you are and why you're here, the more alignment you have to that, the more easily these things just flow in and life becomes effortless, and you don't have to work so hard to overcome all these different misalignments from your conditioning that was, the way I look at it is that, you're brought into the world innocent, and then basically you fracture off from that innocence. You become separate from yourself. Like this would be the ego. And this would be, like your truth or God or whatever you want to call it right here. And this is mostly formed by, stuff that happens, traumas, things schools tell us, systems, mistruths about ourselves. You're not good enough. You don't deserve that. You have to work harder. You're not working hard enough. All those things, and it creates separate from how we were really created. Our true essence, our true spirit. And as you do this work, you can come back and you can experience heaven on earth, where it doesn't matter as much what shows up in your reality, because you know that you can come back. What is it within me that's creating this experience, and shift it to what you desire. And so this tool is this, and it's like the key to always know where you're going. And just writing this alone is enough, but it's even more powerful when you have someone like come in and making sure that you go deeper, but then also you're able to look at your current reality and someone that can mirror you really well and show you where you're at and maybe these gaps right here. And that's mostly the work that I do with people, with my one-on-one clients. Does anyone have any questions about this? All right, so the last part is to, and this you might want to, the last part's kind of where you tie it all in into a story. Like if you were to wake up tomorrow and experience all these different desires to being fulfilled in one day. Like you woke up tomorrow, every hour was like the most epic hour you've ever had in your entire life. Like what would be that story? You wake up next to your partner, or your kids or whatever, and like what would happen? Do you wake up alone? Who do you wake up next to? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? And you start incorporating these different pieces of your desires into the story. And so think of it, it's like you're writing the movie of your life. I probably should have had more room, but because I think mine's like 5 pages long typed. Yeah, stories can be a very powerful way to communicate, a moral or inspiration. Stories a lot of times, who doesn't like an inspiring story, right? This exercise helps you create. It's using the truth in your desires to create your own story. And we all have the power to create our own story. Like, I know I did. I was at a point where I'm like that old story's done for me. And so I need to go create a new story. And I would invite you to spend some time with this. It took me, the last time I did it, it took me about a week of like going through this and like just one day just writing, hey, from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., I had the most epic hour. Like, what would that hour be like? And just do that for like 2 weeks. It's like a journal, kind of like journaling in the morning or before you go to bed. And like really dig into these things and follow this outline here. And I've never not seen these things happen when you put your heart into it. They end up happening. I don't know how they happen. I mean, I have some techniques that I use to make them happen. I don't know how it happens. I just know it works. And I see it time and time and time again with everyone I work with. And so this is the exercise I have my clients go through, so I have an idea of what they want. And then I kind of use this as their North Star, and then it helps me understand where they need help to get where they need to go. And you can also use it as a tool to kind of just some self-evaluation. Does anyone have any questions? Well, this is what I do to help people. This is my purpose, is to help people fulfill their desires, or help fulfill their desires by living their purpose in life, in their life and business. And if there's anything I can do to help you or help you get clear, if you're feeling stuck or that you want to make your purpose more powerful in this world, I'd love to talk to you. And yeah, I'd really encourage you guys to spend and invest some time into creating this story. What's your next story? What do you want tomorrow to be like? And then just watch the magic unfold. The more work you put into it, the more you get out of it. Any last questions? Yeah, I wish I could have fit all this into an hour, but this is actually a little bit of it's a good overview and outline to get you started though. The first part we was pretty in depth, but the story part is it just takes a little bit of time and just to break it down into manageable chunks. Hey, I want the most epic 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Just write about that. Next day, do 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then read it every once in a while or every day. Some people read it every day. I've been doing this so much that I just write it and it just happens. Doesn't always happen as quick as I'd like it to, but it happens.
Dave.
Thank you. Thanks for showing up, guys.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
You know, the more we all do this work, the more we all have to share. And I really believe that the more we're in line with what we desire, You know, the more people that are living like this, the more examples we have out there. And so this is why this stuff is so important to me. That, you know, we all do this work, and so thank you for showing up. I appreciate you guys.
What's your website?
Steve.love. Yes. Yeah, and you can email me at steve.love. And if you guys want, I have my story about this particular exercise that I spoke a little bit about that I could email you if you want to put down your email. I can send it over to you.
I have also one question. How long does it actually take to achieve perhaps most of the desires or to see some good progress?
It's a great question. Generally, from my experience, you know, I'm months, depending on, but sometimes I'll have some desires that I can shift, and it just happens like that, where it's weeks. Or like my client experience, it was 5 days later. They called in the money they wanted, money they've never seen before. And so it just really depends on how, the more aligned you are to these things, and the more tools and support that you have to bring in those alignments, the quicker they happen. Like, that's why I always have my, you know, my support team, my coaches and stuff. So I'm always doing this work. So I'm always living in this space of like, where do I need to shift to get there? And so it just really depends on where you're at, what support and resources you have to bring those things in.
And how often do you work normally with a client? I mean, one particular client every week, 1 hour? Or
Yeah, generally when I work with people, it's for 3 months, and it's basically once a week for anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. It kind of just depends on what they need and what's going on in their life. Thank you.